Commander Jake Harrison stood at the main window of the human ship U.S. Harmony and watched the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was the biggest structure he had ever seen in space. It looked like a giant metal city floating among the stars. Hundreds of different alien ships moved around it like tiny insects around a bright light. Jake felt nervous but tried not to show it. This was the most important day in human history. Today they would meet the Zeltharian Empire for the first time as equals. At least that was what everyone hoped would happen. Dr. Lisa Morgan walked up beside him. She was the best language expert on Earth and had spent 2 years learning everything she could about the Zeltharians. Her red hair was pulled back tight, and she carried a thick tablet full of notes about alien customs. "The docking bay is on level 7, Lisa said while checking her tablet. "We need to remember that Zeltharians bow 3 times when they meet someone important. Never look them directly in the eyes until they speak first. And whatever you do, don't smile. They think showing teeth is a threat." Captain Tony Blake joined them at the window. He was a big man with short gray hair and many scars from old battles. Tony was there to protect the team, but also to show the aliens that humans could fight if needed. "I still think we should have brought more security," Tony said while watching the alien ships move around the station. "Some of those vessels look like warships to me." Amy Carter looked up from her computer station. She was young and smart, and could make any machine work better than its makers intended. Her job was to keep all their communications safe from alien spying. "The Zeltharians have been watching our radio signals for 50 years, Amy said. "They know more about us than we know about them. But I've been watching their signals too. They're curious about us, but they don't think we're dangerous." Jake nodded and tried to look confident. 300 years ago, humans had first left Earth and started traveling to other worlds. They had met many alien species since then, but none as powerful as the Zeltharians. This ancient race had ruled a large part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They had technology that seemed like magic, and armies that could destroy entire solar systems. Most aliens in the galaxy either feared the Zeltharians or wanted to be their friends. Humans were too new and too weak to matter to such a great empire. But something had changed recently. The Zeltharians had sent a message asking for this meeting. Nobody knew why. The ship's captain spoke over the communication system. "Attention diplomatic team. We're beginning docking procedures now. Please prepare for arrival." Jake looked at his team one more time. Lisa was still reading her notes about proper behavior. Tony was checking his weapon, even though he wasn't supposed to carry it during the meeting. Amy was running final tests on their translation equipment. "Remember what we practiced," Jake said to everyone. "We're here to show them that humans deserve respect. We may be young compared to them, but we've learned fast, and we've survived many wars. We have something to offer the galaxy." The ship shook slightly as it connected to the space station. Jake could hear the sound of air being pumped between the two vessels. Soon they would breathe alien air and walk on alien ground. Lisa put away her tablet and stood straight. "The Zeltharian ambassador is named Kira Valthor. She's very important in their government and has never failed at any mission they gave her. The other aliens call her the Ice Queen because she never shows emotion and always follows the rules perfectly." "Sounds friendly," Tony said with a small laugh. "She's not supposed to be friendly," Lisa replied. "She's supposed to decide if we're worth their time." Amy packed up her equipment and joined the group. "All our gear is working perfectly. The translation system should handle basic conversation, but some of their concepts don't translate well into English. If something sounds strange, that might be why." Jake walked toward the exit door. The others followed him down a long hallway to the airlock that connected their ship to the space station. Jake had been in many dangerous situations during his military career, but this felt different. Today he wasn't fighting for one planet or one group of people. He was representing all of humanity. The airlock door opened with a soft sound. Beyond it was a corridor made of some kind of white metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air smelled different here, cleaner somehow, but with a strange metallic taste. They walked through several more corridors, each one bigger and more impressive than the last. The walls showed pictures of alien worlds and great battles from long ago. Everything was perfectly clean and organized. It felt more like a museum than a place where people lived and worked. Finally, they reached a large door that was twice as tall as Jake. It opened without making any sound and revealed a huge room with a high ceiling. The walls were covered with symbols that hurt Jake's eyes to look at directly. In the center of the room was a long table made of what looked like black glass. On the other side of the table stood 3 figures in long robes. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. These were the Zelthurians. The one in the middle stepped forward, and Jake knew this had to be Ambassador Kira Velthor. She was beautiful in a cold, dangerous way. Her face showed no expression at all as she looked at each human in turn. When her eyes met Jake's, he felt like she was looking directly into his mind. Kira began to speak in a voice that sounded like music, but carried no warmth at all. The translation device in Jake's ear turned her words into English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, representatives of humanity. I am Ambassador Kira Velthor of the Zeltharian Empire. We will now begin the formal evaluation of your species." The formal meeting had been going on for 6 hours, and Jake felt like they were getting nowhere. Ambassador Kira and her 2 assistants asked the same types of questions over and over again. How long had humans been in space? What was their population? How many worlds did they control? What weapons did they have? Jake answered each question as honestly as he could, but he could see that the Zeltharians were not impressed. Compared to their ancient empire, humanity looked like children playing with toys. 300 years in space meant nothing to a race that had been traveling between stars for 10,000 years. 50 human worlds were tiny compared to the thousands of planets under Zeltharian control. Dr. Lisa Morgan tried to help by explaining human achievements in science and art. She talked about great human writers and musicians and inventors. But the Zeltharians listened with the same cold politeness they showed to everything else. Amy Carter demonstrated some of their advanced computer technology, but the aliens already had machines that were much better. Captain Tony Blake said nothing during most of the meeting. His job was to observe and protect the team, not to speak. But Jake could see that Tony was getting frustrated with how the aliens treated them. The Zeltharians spoke to humans the way adults might speak to small children who were trying to act grown up. The worst part was that Jake couldn't argue with their attitude. Everything they said about humanity was true. Humans were young and weak compared to the great powers of the galaxy. They had fought many wars, but always against other humans or primitive aliens. They had never faced anything like the Zeltharian Empire. Finally, Ambassador Kira called for a break in the formal discussions. She stood up from the black glass table and walked to a side door. Her 2 assistants followed her, without saying anything. Jake and his team were left alone in the huge room. "This is not going well," Lisa said quietly. "They're treating this like a job interview for a position we're not qualified for." "Maybe that's exactly what it is," Tony replied. "Maybe they already decided we're not worth their time, and this whole meeting is just for show." Amy was checking her equipment to make sure it was still working properly. "I've been monitoring their communication devices," she said. "They're sending reports back to their home world every few minutes. I can't understand what they're saying, but they don't sound excited." Jake walked over to the large window that looked out into space. He could see dozens of alien ships moving around the station. Some of them belonged to species that were allies of the others were from neutral worlds that traded with the Empire. All of them were more advanced and more powerful than anything humanity had built. "We knew this would be difficult," Jake said to his team. "The Zeltharians don't need anything from us. We have to find a way to show them that we have value beyond our technology or our military strength. The side door opened again, and the three Zeltharians returned to the room. But instead of sitting back down at the formal table, Ambassador Kira walked toward the window where Jake was standing. Her two assistants stayed near the door as if they were guarding it. "Commander Harrison," Kira said in her musical voice. "Would you join me for a moment?" Jake felt surprised. During the formal meeting, Kira had spoken only to the group as a whole. She had never addressed any of them by name or asked to speak privately. Lisa looked worried and Tony moved slightly closer, ready to protect Jake if needed. Jake walked over to where Kira was standing near the window. She was taller than he had realized, almost 7 feet, and her pale blue skin seemed to glow slightly in the light from the stars outside. Her large dark eyes looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Your species interests me, Commander," Kira said quietly. "Most young races we meet are either too aggressive or too afraid. They either want to fight us or they want to hide from us. But humans seem different." "Different how?" Jake asked. Kira was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars. Then she stepped closer to Jake until she was standing right beside him. He could smell something like flowers and metal coming from her robes. "I have studied your history," she said in a voice so low that only Jake could hear. "Your wars, your disasters, your failures, and victories. I have watched how your people respond when everything seems hopeless. You do not give up. You do not accept defeat. You find ways to win that nobody else would think of." Jake didn't know what to say. This was not the cold, formal diplomat who had been questioning them for hours. This was someone different, someone who seemed almost human in her curiosity. Kira leaned in even closer until her mouth was near Jake's ear. When she spoke again, her words were barely a whisper, but they hit Jake like a physical blow. "Your species fascinates me, Commander Harrison. I have studied your history, your wars, your resilience. I believe humans possess something my people have forgotten. Prove to me that humanity deserves not just recognition, but respect. Show me why the galaxy should fear and admire you in equal measure." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. This was not part of any diplomatic protocol he had ever heard of. Kira was asking him to do something, but he didn't understand what. Fear and admire humanity. How could he possibly prove something like that? Before Jake could respond, Kira stepped back, and her face returned to its previous cold expression. She spoke in her normal voice again, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "We should return to our formal discussions now," she said. "There are still many questions that need to be answered." Jake looked at his team and saw that Lisa and Tony were both staring at him with confusion. They had seen Kira whisper something to him, but they couldn't hear what she had said. Amy was watching her instruments carefully, probably trying to figure out if the Zeltharians were using some kind of secret communication device. As they walked back to the black glass table, Jake's mind was racing. What did Kira mean about proving humanity's worth? Why had she whispered instead of speaking openly? And what had she meant about her people forgetting something that humans still possessed? The formal meeting continued for another 2 hours, but Jake found it hard to concentrate on the questions. He kept thinking about Kira's words and the strange way she had looked at him when she spoke them. Several times he caught her watching him with those large dark eyes, as if she was waiting for him to understand something important. When the meeting finally ended, the Zeltharians said they would consider everything they had learned and give their decision the next day. Jake and his team returned to their ship, but Jake couldn't stop thinking about the whispered challenge that had changed everything. Jake couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about what Ambassador Kira had whispered to him during the meeting. Her words didn't make sense according to everything Lisa had taught them about Zeltharian culture. The aliens were supposed to be formal and proper at all times. They never broke protocol or spoke privately during official meetings. Early the next morning, Jake called his team together in their ship's meeting room. Tony brought coffee, and Amy had her computer ready to take notes. Lisa looked tired, probably from staying up late, reading about Zeltharian customs. "I need to tell you all something that happened yesterday," Jake said. He explained exactly what Kira had whispered to him near the window. He repeated her words as closely as he could remember them. Lisa dropped her coffee cup. Luckily it was empty, or the mess would have been terrible. "That's impossible," she said. "Zeltharians never break protocol. They especially never make private challenges during formal diplomatic meetings." "Are you sure that's what she said?" "I'm sure," Jake replied. "She wanted me to prove that humanity deserves respect. She said we should show the galaxy why they should fear and admire us." Tony leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Sounds like she wants us to start a fight with someone. Maybe this is a trap to make us look aggressive." Amy was typing notes on her computer while they talked. "Actually, this might make sense," she said. "I've been analyzing the data from yesterday's meeting. The Zeltharians were recording everything we said and did, but they were also running what looked like psychological tests. They were studying how we reacted to stress and frustration." Lisa stood up and began walking around the small room. "Wait a minute. There's something in the old texts about Zeltharian culture. Something called the Proving. It's supposed to be a secret test that allows promising species to demonstrate their worth outside of normal diplomatic channels." "What kind of test?" Jake asked. "I don't know the details," Lisa said. "The information is incomplete, but according to these old records, the Zeltharians sometimes give special challenges to species they think might have hidden potential. If the species passes the test, they get immediate recognition and respect. If they fail, they're never given another chance." Before anyone could say more, Amy's computer made a sound indicating an incoming message. She read it quickly and then looked up at the others with surprise. "It's from the Zeltharian delegation," she said. "They want to meet with us again this morning. But this time they're not asking for a formal diplomatic session. They want to discuss what they call a practical demonstration of human capabilities." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This had to be connected to Kira's whispered challenge. What kind of practical demonstration? Amy read more of the message. "They have a situation that needs to be resolved. A crisis on a mining world called Kepler 4b. They want to know if humanity would be willing to help." An hour later, Jake and his team were back in the big meeting room on Nexus Prime. This time, Ambassador Kira was alone. Her two assistants were nowhere to be seen. She stood beside a large display screen that showed a picture of a rocky planet with several moons. "Kepler 4b is an important mining world," Kira explained. "It produces rare metals that are used in advanced technology throughout this sector of space. 3 days ago, a group of pirates took control of the main mining facility. They are holding over 2,000 workers as hostages." The display screen changed to show pictures of the mining facility. It looked like a small city built around several deep holes in the ground. Large machines moved materials up from underground, while smaller vehicles carried supplies between different buildings. "The pirates are led by a Zeltharian named Vex Morden," Kira continued. "He was once a military officer in our empire, but he turned to crime many years ago. His forces are well equipped, and they know our military tactics better than most enemies we face." Tony studied the pictures carefully. "How many pirates are we talking about?" "Approximately 300 fighters with advanced weapons and armor," Kira replied. "They have taken defensive positions throughout the facility, and they're using the hostages as human shields. Any direct assault would result in massive casualties among the innocent workers." Lisa looked confused. "Why are you telling us this? Surely the Zeltharian military could handle this situation better than we could." Kira's expression didn't change, but Jake thought he saw something flicker in her dark eyes. "The Zeltharian High Command believes this situation is too complex and dangerous for a minor species to handle successfully. However, they are willing to allow humans to attempt a rescue mission as a learning experience. If you succeed, it would demonstrate capabilities that might be relevant to your diplomatic status. Jake understood immediately. This was the test that Kira had hinted at during their whispered conversation. The Zeltharians weren't really asking for help with the pirates. They were giving humanity a chance to prove their worth by succeeding, where others had failed. What happened to the previous rescue attempts? Jake asked. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force sent a battalion of their best troops 2 days ago, Kira said. The pirates detected their approach and executed 50 hostages. As a warning, the peacekeepers were forced to retreat. The Andromedan Republic offered to negotiate with the pirates, but Vex Morden killed their ambassador during the first meeting. Amy was taking notes on her computer. So a direct military assault won't work, and negotiation won't work. What? Makes you think humans could do better? Perhaps you cannot, Kira replied. But the opportunity is being offered nonetheless. You have 24 hours to decide if you want to accept this mission. Jake looked at his team. Tony was studying the tactical information on the display screen. Lisa was reading about the planet's environment and the mining operation. Amy was analyzing the communication systems and security measures. We need to discuss this privately, Jake said to Kira. Of course, she replied, but Commander Harrison, you should know that this is not just a rescue mission. Vex Morden has been embarrassing the Zeltharian Empire for over 5 years. Our best military commanders have tried to capture him many times without success. If a young species like humanity could accomplish what we have failed to do, it would be very significant. After Kira left the room, Jake's team spent several hours analyzing the situation. The more they learned, the more impossible the mission seemed. The pirates had better weapons, better armor, and better defensive positions. They knew the mining facility better than any rescue force could, and they had proven that they were willing to kill hostages if anyone tried to attack them. But Jake kept thinking about Kira's whispered words. She had said that humans possessed something her people had forgotten. She wanted humanity to show the galaxy why they should be both feared and admired. Maybe this impossible mission was exactly the kind of challenge where human qualities would make the difference. We're going to do it, Jake announced to his team. Tony looked at him like he was crazy. Jake, this is suicide. We're talking about 4 people against 300 pirates with advanced weapons. No, Jake said. We're talking about 4 humans against 300 enemies who think like everyone else in the galaxy. They're expecting us to either attack directly or try to negotiate. They're not expecting us to do something completely different. What did you have in mind? Lisa asked. Jake smiled for the first time since the meeting started. Something that would make Kira's people proud and terrified at the same time. Jake's plan was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of trying to fight the pirates or negotiate with them, he decided to turn the hostages into allies and the pirates into enemies of each other. The team spent 12 hours preparing for the mission. Amy worked on hacking into the mining facility's computer systems, using techniques that human programmers had developed, but aliens didn't understand. Lisa studied the different alien cultures represented among both the pirates and hostages, looking for ways to create division and cooperation. Tony gathered equipment that looked primitive compared to alien technology but could be used in ways that advanced weapons could not. Jake focused on the most important part of the plan, which was understanding the mind of Vex Morden. The rogue Zeltharian was smart and experienced, but he thought like a military officer from an ancient empire. He expected his enemies to follow predictable patterns of attack and defense. Their ship, a small human vessel called the Starburst, approached Kepler 44 to be using a flight path that looked like a routine supply delivery. The pirates detected them but didn't see them as a threat. For humans in a tiny ship were hardly worth worrying about compared to the military forces that had tried to attack the facility. Jake opened a communication channel to the mining facility. This is Commander Jake Harrison of the Human Diplomatic Service. We're here to deliver medical supplies to your hostages. We know you have wounded people who need help. Vex Morden's voice came through the speakers. He sounded amused by Jake's request. Humans, I wondered when your pathetic species would try to play hero. You may land in Bay 7, but any attempt at rescue will result in the immediate execution of 100 hostages. Understood, Jake replied. We're only here to help injured people. The starburst landed in the designated bay, and Jake's team walked out carrying medical supplies and equipment. They were met by a dozen heavily armed pirates, who searched them carefully for weapons. The aliens found nothing dangerous because Tony had hidden their real tools inside medical devices that looked harmless. Jake and Lisa were escorted to the main facility to treat wounded hostages. Tony and Amy were taken to a storage area where they were supposed to wait under guard. This separation was exactly what Jake had planned for. In the medical area, Jake began working on injured miners while Lisa talked to the hostages in their own languages. She told them that help was coming, but they needed to be ready to fight for their freedom when the time was right. The hostages were frightened, but desperate enough to listen to any plan that might save their lives. Meanwhile, Tony used his mechanical skills to modify the facility's environmental systems. He created small devices that could release sleeping gas or confusion chemicals into specific areas of the building. The pirates never noticed because they were watching for weapons, not engineering tools. Amy connected her computer to the facility's communication network and began the most important part of the mission. She started sending false messages between different groups of pirates, making each group think the others were planning to betray them. She also intercepted communications from Vex Morden to his lieutenants and changed the orders to create confusion and mistrust. The plan began to work within hours. Several pirate groups started arguing with each other about who was in charge of different areas. Some of them began to suspect that their leader was making secret deals with the Zeltharian Empire. Others believed that a rival pirate group was planning to kill them and take all the ransom money. Jake moved through the facility, pretending to treat injured people, but actually organizing the hostages into resistance groups. He taught them how to use mining equipment as weapons and how to coordinate their actions using hand signals that the pirates wouldn't understand. Lisa discovered that many of the pirates were not there by choice. Some had been forced to join Vex Morden's group after he destroyed their home worlds. Others were young and desperate and didn't really want to hurt innocent people. She began talking to these reluctant pirates and convincing them that they could have a better life if they helped the hostages instead of hurting them. The breakthrough came when Amy managed to hack into Vex Morden's personal communication device. She discovered that he was planning to kill all the hostages once he received the ransom money. Even worse, he was planning to kill most of his own followers to avoid sharing the profits. Amy made sure this information reached every pirate in the facility. She sent the messages using Vex Morden's own communication codes so the pirates would believe the information was real. The result was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The pirates began turning against each other and against their leader. Several groups decided to surrender to the hostages rather than face execution by their own allies. Others started fighting among themselves over who would be the new leader. In the chaos that followed, Jake gave the signal for the hostages to begin their uprising. 2,000 miners armed with industrial tools and mining equipment rose up against their captors at the same time. They had been organized into small groups that attacked different targets simultaneously, making it impossible for the remaining pirates to coordinate their defense. Tony activated his environmental modifications, filling key areas of the facility with sleeping gas that knocked out pirates but left the hostages unaffected because they had been given protective masks. Amy continued to send false communications that made the remaining pirates think they were being attacked by a massive military force. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, Vex Morden was dead, killed by his own followers, who blamed him for betraying them. Most of the pirates had either surrendered or switched sides to help the hostages. The few who tried to fight were overwhelmed by sheer numbers and determination. Jake and his team had accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced military forces could not. They had rescued 2,000 hostages, captured a pirate stronghold, and eliminated one of the most dangerous criminals in known space. And they had done it without firing a single shot or losing a single life on their side. The rescue ships that arrived the next day found the mining facility under the control of its own workers, with the former pirates helping to repair the damage they had caused. The hostages were free, the pirates were reformed or captured, and the crisis was over. But the most important result was the message that Jake sent back to Nexus Prime. It was addressed to Ambassador Kira and contained only a few words. The job is done. Now you know what humans can do when everything seems impossible. We don't win through superior force or advanced technology. We win by making our enemies into our friends and by inspiring people to fight for something better than what they have. This is what your people have forgotten, and this is why the galaxy should respect us. 3 days later, when Jake and his team returned to Nexus Prime, they found the Zeltharian delegation waiting for them with documents that would change human history forever. The meeting room on Nexus Prime looked different when Jake and his team returned. The cold, formal atmosphere was gone. Instead of the intimidating black glass table, there was a smaller round table made of warm wood. The harsh lighting had been replaced with softer illumination that made the room feel welcoming rather than threatening. Ambassador Kira was waiting for them, but she was not alone. 2 other Zeltharians stood beside her, both wearing robes decorated with symbols that Lisa recognized as marks of very high rank. These were not mere diplomats, but leaders from the Zeltharian High Command itself. "Commander Harrison," Kira said, as Jake entered the room. "Please allow me to introduce High Admiral Zex Corvin and Supreme Counselor Nira Velshan. They have traveled here specifically to meet with you and your team." Jake felt surprised. According to everything they had learned about Zeltharian culture, leaders of such high rank never met directly with representatives of minor species. Something significant had changed since their last meeting. The High Admiral stepped forward. He was older than Kira, with silver markings on his blue skin that indicated great age and wisdom. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded vast fleets and governed entire star systems. "Commander Harrison, what your team accomplished on Kepler 442b has been studied by our best military analysts," he said. "They concluded that your mission should have been impossible. The tactical situation was hopeless, the enemy was too well prepared, and your resources were completely inadequate." Jake wasn't sure if this was a compliment or a criticism. "We did what we thought was necessary, Admiral." "Indeed you did," the Supreme Counselor said. She was even more impressive than the Admiral, with a presence that seemed to fill the entire room. "But you did it in a way that none of our strategists predicted. You turned a military problem into a social solution. You made enemies into allies and transformed despair into hope." Amy looked confused. "With respect, Counselor, humans have been using those kinds of tactics for centuries. They're not that unusual for us, but they are unusual for everyone else," Kira said quietly. "Commander Harrison, the test you completed was not just about rescuing hostages or defeating pirates. It was about demonstrating something that the galaxy has lost." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "What do you mean?" The High Admiral activated a display screen that showed pictures from throughout galactic history. Jake saw images of great battles, fallen empires, and extinct civilizations. For thousands of years, the galaxy has been dominated by advanced species that rely on superior technology and overwhelming force, the Admiral explained. "When the Zeltharian Empire encounters a problem, we solve it by building bigger ships and more powerful weapons. When the Andromedan Republic faces a crisis, they negotiate treaties and trade agreements. When the Galactic Peacekeeping Force confronts criminals, They send in elite soldiers with the best equipment available. These approaches work most of the time, the Supreme Counselor added, but they all depend on having advantages that our enemies don't have: better technology, more resources, superior training, or greater numbers. Jake was beginning to understand what they were trying to tell him. But what happens when you face an enemy who has all the same advantages you do? Exactly, Kira said. What happens when superior technology meets superior technology? What happens when overwhelming force meets overwhelming force? The result is usually mutual destruction or endless stalemate. The display screen changed to show recent conflicts throughout the galaxy. Jake saw images of devastated worlds, failed peace negotiations, and military campaigns that had lasted for decades without resolution. The galaxy has become stagnant, the High Admiral said. We solve problems by applying more of the same solutions that have always worked before. We have forgotten how to be creative, how to adapt, how to find completely new approaches to old challenges. But humans remember, the Supreme Counselor said. Your species has survived and thrived, not because you had the best technology or the strongest military, but because you could adapt to any situation and find solutions that nobody else would think of. Amy was taking notes on her computer as fast as she could type. So the test on Kepler-4 for to be wasn't really about rescuing hostages. The rescue was important, Kira replied. But the real test was whether you would approach an impossible situation the way other species would, or whether you would find a uniquely human solution. Tony had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. You're saying that the galaxy needs humans because we think differently from everyone else. We're saying that the galaxy needs humans because you think it all, the High Admiral said. Most advanced species have become so dependent on their technology and their established methods that they've stopped innovating. They've stopped questioning whether there might be better ways to solve problems. The Supreme Counselor stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Commander Harrison, when Ambassador Kira whispered her challenge to you, she was taking a great risk. If you had failed the test, or if you had approached it like every other species would have, the consequences for her career would have been severe. Jake looked at Kira with new understanding. You believed in us before you had any proof that we could succeed. I believed in the potential I saw in your history, Kira replied. But I needed to see if that potential could be turned into action when it mattered most. The High Admiral returned to the table and picked up a crystal tablet covered with alien writing. This document grants humanity full recognition as an equal member of the galactic community. But more than that, it invites your species to join the Galactic Council as a full voting member. You would be the youngest species ever to receive such an honor. Lisa dropped her pen in shock. The Galactic Council. But we're barely 300 years old as a spacefaring civilization. Age is not the same as wisdom, the Supreme Counselor said. And wisdom is not the same as intelligence. Your species has something that we need to learn from. Jake felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. Membership in the Galactic Council would give humanity a voice in decisions that affected billions of worlds and trillions of lives. It would open up opportunities for trade, technology exchange, and exploration that had never been available before. There is one condition, Kira said. The Zeltharian Empire would like to establish a formal partnership with humanity. We want to learn from your methods of problem-solving and adaptation. In exchange, we would share our advanced technology and provide military protection for human worlds. You want us to teach you how to think like humans? Amy asked. We want you to help us remember how to think creatively, the High Admiral replied. Our empire has grown powerful through order and discipline and tradition, but power without flexibility leads to stagnation. Strength without adaptability leads to fragility. Jake looked at his team and saw excitement and determination in their faces. This was beyond anything they had dreamed possible when they first arrived at Nexus Prime. I accept on behalf of humanity, Jake said. But I want you to understand something about how humans think. We didn't prove ourselves to earn your respect, Ambassador Kira. We proved that respect isn't something you earn through demonstrations of power or superiority. Respect is something you give and receive freely because you recognize the value in others, even when they're different from you. Kira smiled for the first time since Jake had met her. It was a beautiful expression that transformed her entire face and made her seem almost human. That lesson, she said, is exactly why the galaxy needs humanity.